hearty good morning to all. From our new Oxford Modern English course book, in page number 80, we have a poem, Last Lesson of the Afternoon. Students, before turning over the page of the poem, let us talk about the poet. The poem, Last Lesson of the Afternoon, is written by David Herbert Lawrence. David Herbert Lawrence was an English writer, poet, and a painter. He is better known for his novels than his poetry. His collection works represent, among other things, an extended reflection upon the dehumanizing effects of modernity and industrialization. David Herbert Lawrence was born on 11 September 1885 in Eastwood, Nottinghamshire, England, and died on 2nd March 1930 at the age of 44 in Vincennes, Alpes-Maritimes department, France. Some of the novels written by David Herbert Lawrence are Sons and Lovers, The Rainbow, Woman in Love, John Thomas and Lady Jane, Lady Chatterley's Lover, and so on. Some of the short stories written by David Herbert Lawrence are Order of Chrysanthemums, The Virgin and the Gypsy, The Rocking Horse Winner, and so on. Now, let me introduce the poem to you. This poem was written towards the end of the First World War. You know, David Herbert Lawrence was not popular in his community. Why? Because he refused to fight in the war and married a German woman. For these reasons, people suspected that he was a spy. Now, what was the next thing? Men that did not fight in the war had to do civilian jobs like teachings. And because there were not many teachers available, classes were very large. The poem Last Lesson of the Afternoon is about this period of his life when he was teaching, and he did this for 4 years. This poem gives us a glimpse into the mind of a teacher. David Herbert Lawrence worked as an honest teacher. He was not going to pretend that he found the untidy essays of his pupils worth reading. He also understood that they did not enjoy what he was teaching. Creative writing was a subject in those days. He wanted his pupils to be creative, but as he was weary and tired, he felt bored in the classroom. On the other hand, pupils were large in number. Students, let us talk about this point with an example. For a teacher, it is possible to teach less students. But if the number will increase and beyond the limit, can the teacher do his work the same? No, isn't it? Suppose in a family there are 2 children. The parents may guide them. But if a family has 12 children, can the parents fulfill the requirements of each child equally? No, isn't it? So, the situation was such that the students were large in numbers and the teacher was himself weary and tired of his work. The period was of the last lesson of that school day, in which the mind of the students might have gone the halfway home. In such situation, it is a difficult task for a teacher to set the student's mind inside a classroom. So, the teacher is eagerly waiting for the last bell to go. Now, let's step into the poem. Welcome back to the poem Last Lesson of the Afternoon, written by David Herbert Lawrence. The poem Last Lesson of the Afternoon has 5 stanzas. In the first stanza of the poem, the poet says that the teacher wonders if the final bell that ends the school day will ever ring. He compares his learners to a pack of hunting dogs. He does this because he feels he has been trying to lead them in one direction while they pull on their leads to go in another direction. The learners are not interested in learning. The teacher is exhausted. He wants to give up. He is not going to force knowledge into them any longer. Come to the second stanza. In the second stanza of the poem, the poet focuses our attention on the written work that is lying on his learners' desks to be collected. The teacher does not even want to look at them. He describes them as insults because he thinks that his learners do not have any respect for him or the subject he is teaching. The work was untidy because in those days there were no ballpoint pens or even fountain pens. Then, how were the students writing? Students used dip pens, and the desks had little wells filled with ink in which they dipped the pens. The trouble was that if you were not very careful, the SS ink would run over your paper and make huge black blobs on your paper. Pupils who did not care about their work would produce sheets of paper with these blobs all over them. Pupils could use blotting papers, otherwise, the ink would get on clothes. The teacher does not see the purpose of all of this, not for him or the learners. Come to the third stanza. In the third stanza of the poet tells us that the teacher makes a decision. What is that? He is not going to spend his energy on his learners. He is going to spend it on himself. He has already tried to teach them, and that did not work. He ends this stanza by saying that he is no longer going to be punished by the careless work. Now he feels that his learners are punishing him through their sloppy work. The teacher thinks he is wasting his physical strength on something that is not worthwhile. Come to the fourth stanza. In this stanza, the poet tells us about the teacher that he is not going to do this any longer. Means he is not going to waste his physical strength on his learners. He no longer cares if they don't learn anything or if their work is incorrect. He feels as if all the teaching and learning is falling down into some huge chasm or empty hole. Despite a creative teacher, he wants his learners be creative in writing and communicating ideas on paper. But only few learners are interested in this. He says to most of them, it is not important if they can write a good description of a dog. Yet, he as a teacher is supposed to care. Come to the fifth stanza. In the fifth stanza of the poet tells us about the teacher that he decides he will not care and he is going to keep his strength to himself. He knows his learners will not care no matter what he does. He and his learners are not going to bash their heads against the wall of each other's indifference. The teacher has decided to sit and wait for the bell. Thank you.